In a small, sleepy town surrounded by lush green fields and thick woods, there lived a woman named Lisa Anderson. She was a single mother raising two young children on her own. Her days were filled with hard work, tending to crops, feeding animals, and making sure her kids had everything they needed. The farm wasn't just land to Lisa. It was her home, her dream, and the only thing she had left after leaving behind a life she rarely spoke about. Lisa's past was shrouded in mystery. To her neighbors, she was simply a kind-hearted woman trying to make ends meet. But what no one knew was that Lisa had once been part of something extraordinary. Years ago, before settling down in this peaceful town, she had served as a green, Beret sniper in the military. Trained to survive in the harshest conditions and skilled in combat tactics, Lisa had seen more danger than most people could imagine. However, her heart yearned for peace. So she left the battlefield behind and started over, determined to build a quiet life for herself and her family. Despite her tough exterior, Lisa loved her simple life. Every morning she woke up early to watch the sunrise over her fields. Her children, 8-year-old Mia and 10-year-old Jake, helped her around the farm when they weren't at school. They laughed together, worked together, and dreamed of turning the farm into something even bigger someday. For Lisa, these moments were priceless. She had found happiness here, far away from the chaos of her former life. But trouble was brewing nearby, though Lisa didn't know it yet. A local gang had begun targeting farms in the area. These men were ruthless, demanding money from families under the guise of protection. If anyone refused to pay, their homes or barns would mysteriously catch fire, or their livestock would disappear overnight. The townsfolk were terrified, and many chose to give in rather than risk losing everything. One sunny afternoon, two rough-looking men showed up at Lisa's farm. They drove a beat-up truck that rattled as it pulled into her driveway. Dressed in leather jackets and boots caked with mud, they looked out of place among the serene beauty of Lisa's property. As they stepped out of the vehicle, one of them lit a cigarette while the other scanned the area with a smirk. They clearly thought this job would be easy. A lone woman working on a farm couldn't possibly resist them. Lisa noticed their arrival immediately. She was kneeling near the vegetable patch, pulling weeds, but her sharp eyes missed nothing. When the men approached her, she stood up slowly, brushing dirt off her hands. One of them spoke first, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Hey, lady," he said, tossing his cigarette onto the ground. "We're here to talk business." Lisa crossed her arms and stared at them without saying a word. Her silence seemed to unnerve the men slightly, but they pressed on. The second man pulled out a crumpled piece of paper and handed it to her. "This is how much you owe us," he said. $5,000 by Friday. Pay up, or we'll burn this place to the ground." For a moment, Lisa didn't respond. Her mind raced, analyzing every detail, their posture, their tone, the way they avoided meeting her gaze directly. These weren't professionals. They were amateurs, relying on intimidation rather than skill. She felt a flicker of anger rise within her, but she kept her emotions in check. This was her home, and she wasn't going to let anyone threaten it. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was calm but firm, carrying a weight that made both men pause. "Get off my property," she said, her words cutting through the air like a blade. "If you come back, you'll regret it." The men exchanged glances, unsure how to react. They hadn't expected resistance, especially not from someone like her. After a brief hesitation, they burst into laughter, mocking her threat. "You think you can stop us?" one of them sneered. "We'll be back, and next time you won't get off so easy." With that, they climbed back into their truck and sped away, leaving behind clouds of dust. Lisa watched them go, her expression unreadable. Inside, however, her mind was already working. She knew the gang wouldn't leave her alone, they never did, and if they returned, she needed to be ready. That evening, Lisa sat alone in her attic, staring at an old wooden chest tucked away in the corner. It had been years since she last opened it, but now she knelt down and lifted the lid. Inside was a rifle, polished and well-maintained despite its age. Next to it lay boxes of ammunition and a few other items she hadn't touched in years. Touching the cold metal of the rifle sent a chill down her spine. She hadn't wanted to revisit this part of her life, but circumstances had forced her hand, She held the weapon. Memories flooded back. Long nights spent lying in wait, the sound of gunfire echoing in her ears, the adrenaline rush of taking precise shots under pressure. Those days were behind her, but the skills she'd acquired remained sharp. Now she would have to use them again, not for war but to protect her family and her home. Lisa spent the rest of the night planning. Using her knowledge of strategy and defense, she began setting traps around the farm. She strung tripwires across paths leading to the house, rigged buckets of paint to fall on intruders, and cleared areas where she could set up hidden vantage points. She also taught her children what to do if strangers came near the house, emphasizing the importance of staying safe and alert. By morning, Lisa felt more prepared. Though she hoped the gang wouldn't return, she knew better than to rely on hope alone. If they came back, she would be ready. And unlike them, she understood that true strength wasn't just about weapons. It was about preparation, patience, and knowing exactly when to strike. As the sun rose over the horizon, casting golden light across her fields, Lisa took a deep breath. Whatever happened next, she was determined to stand her ground. This was her home, and she would defend it with everything she had. The next few days passed in a tense calm. Lisa went about her daily routine, working tirelessly on the farm while keeping a watchful eye on every corner of her property. She woke up before dawn each morning, ensuring that her traps were still intact and her vantage points clear. Though she projected an air of normalcy for her children's sake, her mind was constantly calculating, anticipating the gang's next move. Mia and Jake noticed their mother's heightened alertness but didn't question it. They trusted her completely, knowing she always had a plan. To them, Lisa was invincible, a woman who could handle anything life threw at her. What they didn't realize was just how much danger loomed over their little world. For now, they continued helping around the farm, unaware of the storm brewing outside their peaceful bubble. Meanwhile, back in town, the gang leader Victor was fuming. The two men he had sent to Lisa's farm returned with tales of a defiant woman who refused to back down. At first, Victor dismissed their account, assuming fear had made them exaggerate. But when he heard rumors spreading among his crew about the mysterious farmer who had stood up to them, his curiosity turned into irritation. No one said no to him, not without consequences. Victor wasn't just any thug. He prided himself on being untouchable. He ruled the area with an iron fist, preying on vulnerable families and exploiting their fears. His reputation depended on maintaining control, and Lisa's refusal to bow to his demands threatened that image. Determined to teach her a lesson, he decided to escalate things personally. This time he wouldn't send lackeys. He would lead the charge himself. On the third day after the initial visit, Lisa spotted movement near the edge of her property. Peering through binoculars from the attic window, she saw several figures approaching cautiously. There were 5 of them this time, all armed with bats, crowbars, and knives. Victor walked at the front, his bulky frame towering over the others. His face was twisted with anger, and his fists clenched as if ready to smash anything in his path. Lisa's heart raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had prepared for this moment, and panic wouldn't serve her well. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed her rifle and moved swiftly to her designated position, a hidden loft inside the barn. From there, she had a perfect view of the entire property. She adjusted the scope, scanning the intruders' movements. Each step they took brought them closer to her traps, and she waited patiently for the chaos to unfold. As the gang spread out across the farm, one of them triggered a tripwire near the chicken coop. A bucket filled with bright red paint swung down from above, splattering 3 of them head to toe. Startled shouts erupted as the men stumbled backward, slipping in the sticky mess. Victor barked orders, trying to regain control, but confusion rippled through the group. Some laughed nervously while others cursed loudly, brushing paint off their clothes. From her perch, Lisa watched silently, her finger resting lightly on the trigger of her rifle. She didn't want to fire unless absolutely necessary. Her goal wasn't to kill or maim, it was to protect her family and send a clear message. This was her land and she wouldn't tolerate threats. Victor, humiliated by the prank-like trap, grew angrier. "Enough of this nonsense," he roared, storming toward the house. Behind him, his men hesitated, glancing nervously at one another. None of them wanted to admit it, but something about this situation felt wrong. The woman they had dismissed, as helpless, had already outsmarted them once. Who knew what else she had planned? When Victor reached the porch, he kicked open the front door with brute force. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating empty rooms. Furniture was neatly arranged, and everything seemed untouched. Confident that Lisa must have fled, Victor stepped further inside, calling out mockingly, come out, wherever you are." Suddenly, a sharp click echoed through the room. Victor froze mid-step, his eyes widening as he realized the sound came from behind him. Slowly, he turned around and found himself staring down the barrel of Lisa's rifle. Standing calmly in the doorway, Lisa's expression was unreadable. Her hands were steady, her posture relaxed yet commanding. "I warned you," she said, her voice low and steady. "Leave now and don't come back, or stay and see how far I'm willing to go." For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Victor's men crowded behind him, unsure whether to charge forward or retreat. Fear flickered in their eyes as they realized they were dealing with someone far more dangerous than they had anticipated. Finally, Victor raised his hands slowly, backing away toward the door. "You win this round," he muttered, motioning for his crew to follow him. As the gang scrambled off her property, Lisa lowered her weapon, exhaling deeply. Her body trembled slightly from adrenaline, but she remained composed. She knew this. Victory might only be temporary. Men like Victor didn't take defeat lightly, and she suspected they would return. Still, she had bought herself some time, and proven that she wasn't someone to be trifled with. Over the following days, word of Lisa's bold stand spread throughout the town. Neighbors whispered about the mysterious woman who had single-handedly driven away Victor's gang. Some admired her courage, while others worried about retaliation. Despite the mixed reactions, Lisa stayed focused on protecting her family. She reinforced her defenses, teaching Mia and Jake additional safety measures and rehearsing emergency plans. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Lisa sat on the porch with her children. The air was cool and the sounds of crickets filled the silence. Mia leaned against her mother, asking innocently, "Mom, why did those bad men come here?" Lisa paused, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes people try to take what doesn't belong to them because they think it's easy. But we taught them otherwise, didn't we?" Jake nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, you showed them not to mess with us." Lisa smiled, ruffling his hair. "That's right. We stick together, and we protect what's ours. No matter what happens, we'll always find a way to stand strong." Though her words reassured her children, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that trouble wasn't finished with them yet. She knew Victor wouldn't give up so easily. Gangs like his thrived on dominance, and losing to a single mother on a farm was a blow to his pride. Still, she refused to let fear dictate her actions. If he came back, she would be ready, and she would fight harder than ever to keep her family safe. That night, as Lisa tucked her children into bed, she lingered for a moment, watching them sleep peacefully. Their innocence reminded her of why she had left her violent past behind. She had chosen this life, to build something beautiful, something worth fighting for. And fight she would, with every ounce of strength she possessed. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying whispers of uncertainty. But within the walls of her home, Lisa felt a sense of purpose. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was prepared to face them, not just as a mother, but as a protector. After all, the battlefield may have changed, but the warrior within her remained unchanged. The days that followed Victor's retreat were tense but quiet. Lisa kept her guard up, knowing full well that the gang leader wouldn't let the humiliation slide. Men like him thrived on dominance and control, and being outsmarted by a single Mother on a farm was a blow to his pride. Still, Lisa refused to live in fear. Instead, she focused on strengthening her defenses while maintaining a sense of normalcy for her children. Every morning, Lisa woke before sunrise, scanning the horizon for any signs of trouble. She checked her traps daily, ensuring they were still functional, and adjusted her vantage points to cover more ground. Her rifle remained close at hand, always loaded and ready. At night, she made sure all doors and windows were securely locked, teaching Mia and Joe how to stay safe if anything unexpected happened. To them, these lessons felt like games, a way to help Mom protect their home, but Lisa knew better. She understood the gravity of the situation, even if she shielded her kids from it. Meanwhile, news of Lisa's confrontation with Victor spread throughout the small town. Neighbors whispered about the mysterious woman who had stood up to the gang. Some admired her bravery, calling her a hero, while others feared retaliation. A few even warned Lisa to be careful, reminding her that Victor wasn't someone to trifle with. But Lisa listened politely and thanked them for their concern, without showing any sign of worry. Inside, however, she braced herself for what might come next. Victor, too, was busy plotting his revenge. Back at his hideout, a dilapidated warehouse on the outskirts of town, he paced furiously, replaying the events at Lisa's farm over and over in his mind. He couldn't shake the image of her standing there, calm and composed, with a rifle pointed directly at him. It infuriated him. How could a lone woman have bested him? He vowed to crush her spirit and her farm, once and for all. To make matters worse, rumors of his failure began circulating among rival gangs. His reputation was at stake, and he couldn't afford to look weak. Determined to reclaim his authority, Victor called a meeting with his crew. "We're going back," he announced, slamming his fist on a table. "But this time we do it right. No mistakes." His men exchanged nervous glances. They had seen firsthand what Lisa was capable of, and none of them relished the idea of facing her again. Still, they nodded in agreement, unwilling to defy their volatile leader. Together, they devised a new plan, one that involved overwhelming force. Victor decided to bring twice as many men, armed with more weapons and tools to dismantle any traps Lisa might have set. They would strike at dawn, catching her off guard when she least expected it. Unaware of the impending attack, Lisa continued, preparing for the worst. One evening, as she worked in the barn loft, she noticed something unusual, a faint glow coming from the woods beyond her property. At first, she thought it might be moonlight filtering through the trees, but the light moved erratically as if someone were holding a flashlight. Narrowing her eyes, she grabbed her binoculars and peered into the darkness. Sure enough, she spotted figures moving stealthily through the underbrush. They weren't close enough to pose an immediate threat, but their presence confirmed her suspicions. Victor hadn't given up. Lisa didn't panic. Instead, she sprang into action. She retrieved her rifle and quietly climbed down from the loft, careful not to make a sound. Once inside the house, she double-checked that Mia and Jake were asleep before locking their bedroom door from the outside. Then, she slipped out onto the porch, positioning herself where she could monitor both the woods and the driveway. If the gang tried anything tonight, she would be ready. Hours passed, and the figures in the woods eventually disappeared. Whether they were conducting reconnaissance or simply testing her vigilance, Lisa couldn't say for sure. But their visit reinforced her resolve. She returned to the attic, where she spent the rest of the night reviewing her plans and making adjustments. By morning, she had added several new layers of defense, including decoy paths designed to lure intruders into exposed areas. Despite her preparations, Lisa couldn't ignore the growing tension in the air. The townspeople, emboldened by her stand against Victor, began reaching out to offer support. One neighbor, an elderly man named Mr. Thompson, stopped by with a basket of fresh vegetables. "You've done something remarkable, Lisa," he said kindly. "But don't think you have to face this alone. We're here for you." Lisa appreciated the gesture but shook her head firmly. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson, but I can handle it. I won't put anyone else in danger." Her tone left no room for argument, And though Mr. Thompson looked concerned, he respected her decision. Others weren't so easily deterred. A group of farmers organized a makeshift watch committee, taking turns patrolling the area around Lisa's property. Though she hadn't asked for their help, she was grateful for their solidarity. It reminded her that she wasn't truly alone, that people cared about justice and fairness, even in the face of fear. As the week wore on, Lisa's instincts told her the gang would strike soon. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside, set her nerves on edge. Yet she refused to let anxiety consume her. Instead, she channeled her energy into teaching her children resilience. During the day, she showed them how to identify potential threats and respond calmly. At night, she reassured them that no matter what happened, they would always stick together. Finally, the day arrived. Just as the first rays of sunlight peeked over the hills, the sound of engines roared in the distance. Lisa bolted upright, grabbing her rifle and rushing to her vantage point in the barn loft. Through the scope, she saw a convoy of trucks speeding toward her property. There were at least a dozen men, heavily armed and clearly intent on destruction. Victor led the charge, his expression dark with determination. This time, he wasn't taking any chances. As the trucks screeched to a halt near the driveway, the men poured out, fanning across the property. They moved cautiously, wary of traps but confident in their numbers. Lisa watched silently, waiting for the perfect moment to act. One by one, the gang members triggered her traps. Buckets of paint rained down on some, while others stumbled into pits covered with branches. Chaos erupted as shouts and curses filled the air. Victor barked orders, trying to regain control, but his men were disoriented and frustrated. Lisa took advantage of the confusion, firing warning shots into the ground near their feet. The sharp cracks echoed across the field, sending shockwaves through the group. "Enough!" Victor yelled, raising his hands in surrender. "We're leaving!" His voice trembled with rage and humiliation, but he knew they were beaten. Slowly, the gang retreated, climbing back into their trucks and speeding away. When the dust settled, Lisa lowered her rifle, breathing deeply. Her body ached from the adrenaline surge, but she felt a profound sense of relief. For now, the battle was over. She had protected her family and her home. Later that afternoon, the townspeople gathered at Lisa's farm to celebrate her victory. They brought food, supplies, and words of gratitude. Though Lisa tried to deflect their praise, she couldn't deny the warmth in her heart. In standing up to Victor, she had inspired others to find their own courage. And in doing so, she had created something far greater than just a safe haven. She had built a community united by hope and strength. The celebration at Lisa's farm was a rare moment of joy in an otherwise tense period. Neighbors brought pies, casseroles, and baskets of fresh produce to show their gratitude. Children ran around playing tag, their laughter echoing through the fields while adults gathered in small groups, sharing stories about how Lisa had inspired them to stand up against fear. For the first time in weeks, the air felt lighter, as if the weight of Victor's threats had been lifted. But Lisa knew better than to let her guard down completely. While she appreciated the support from her neighbors, she also understood that men like Victor didn't give up easily. His retreat had been humiliating for him, and she suspected he would try again, perhaps with even greater force. Still, she allowed herself to enjoy the moment, knowing it might be one of the last peaceful days she'd have for a while. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the farm, Lisa stood on the porch watching her children play with the other kids. Mia and Jake seemed oblivious to the danger that had loomed over their home just hours earlier. To them, this was simply a fun day spent with friends, a break from their usual routine. Lisa smiled softly, grateful for their innocence. She wanted nothing more than to shield them from the harsh realities of the world, but deep down, she knew they were growing stronger because of her example. That evening, after most of the guests had left, Mr. Thompson lingered behind. He approached Lisa cautiously, his weathered face lined with concern. "Lisa," he said gently, "you've done something incredible here today. But I need to ask, are you sure you don't want help? This isn't just your fight anymore, it's ours. Lisa sighed, leaning against the railing of the porch. She admired Mr. Thompson's courage, but she couldn't risk involving anyone else. I appreciate it, really, she replied, meeting his gaze. But these people, they're dangerous. If anything happens to you or anyone else because of me, I'd never forgive myself. Mr. Thompson nodded slowly, understanding her reasoning but clearly unsatisfied. Just know we're here if you change your mind, he said before turning to leave. As he walked away, Lisa felt a pang of guilt. She hated the idea of shouldering this burden alone, but protecting her family meant keeping others out of harm's way. Later that night, as the house grew quiet, Lisa sat alone in the attic, staring at the rifle resting on the table. The weapon was a stark reminder of her past, a life she had worked hard to leave behind. Yet here she was, using those same skills to defend her home. She couldn't help but wonder if this was fate's way of testing her resolve. Had she truly escaped the battlefield, or had it followed her all along? Her thoughts drifted to her time in the military. She remembered the camaraderie, the adrenaline rush of missions, and the heart-wrenching losses. Those years had shaped her into the person she was today, strong, resourceful, and unyielding. But they had also left scars. Scars she hoped her children would never understand. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her reverie. It was Mia, clutching a stuffed bear and looking hesitant. "Mommy, can I sleep with you tonight?" she asked quietly. Lisa's heart melted. She held out her arms and Mia climbed onto her lap. "Of course, sweetie," she whispered, kissing the top of her daughter's head. "Everything's okay now. You're safe." Mia nodded, though her eyes betrayed lingering uncertainty. "Will those bad men come back?" Lisa hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Maybe," she admitted. "But if they do, we'll be ready. We're strong, remember? Stronger than they'll ever be." Mia smiled faintly, reassured by her mother's confidence. Together they went downstairs, where Jake was already curled up on the couch, fast asleep. Lisa tucked both of her children into bed, staying with them until their breathing grew steady and deep. Then she returned to the attic, her mind racing with possibilities. Victor, meanwhile, was seething. Back at his hideout, he slammed his fist against the wall repeatedly, leaving dents in the crumbling plaster. His men cowered in the corner, too afraid to speak. They had seen their leader angry before, but this was different. This was rage fueled by humiliation and revenge. "We underestimated her," Victor growled, pacing back and forth. "She's not some helpless woman. She's trained, prepared, and she's got the whole damn town backing her now." One of his henchmen dared to speak up. "What do we do now, boss?" Victor stopped mid-step, his eyes narrowing. A sinister smile spread across his face. "We hit her where it hurts," he said coldly. "Not her farm, her people." The room fell, silent as the implication sank in. Attacking Lisa directly hadn't worked, but targeting those who supported her could weaken her resolve. If they hurt the farmers who had rallied around her, or worse, threatened her children, they could break her spirit without firing a single shot. By morning, Lisa sensed something was off. The usual sounds of birds chirping and wind rustling through the trees were absent, replaced by an eerie stillness. She stepped outside, scanning the horizon. Everything appeared normal, yet her instincts screamed that trouble was near. As she walked toward the barn, she noticed tire tracks leading away from the property. At first glance, they seemed harmless, just another neighbor stopping by, but something about them didn't sit right. Following the tracks, she discovered a note pinned to a fence post. It read, "Your neighbors are next. Stop resisting, or they'll pay the price." Lisa's blood ran cold. She crumpled the note in her fist, anger bubbling inside her. Victor wasn't just threatening her anymore. He was dragging innocent people into this. She clenched her jaw, realizing she had two choices: surrender and hand over her farm, or continue fighting and risk putting others in danger. For a moment, doubt crept in. Maybe she should leave. Pack up her family and disappear, just like she had done years ago when she left the military. But then she thought of her children, her neighbors, and the life she had built here. Running wouldn't solve anything. It would only prove Victor right. No, she decided. She wouldn't run. She would fight, not just for herself, but for everyone who believed in standing up to bullies. That afternoon, Lisa called a meeting with her neighbors. She explained the situation honestly, showing them the note and warning them about the gang's intentions. To her surprise, no one backed down. Instead, they vowed to stand together. "We're not letting you face this alone," said Mrs. Harper, a farmer who lived down the road. "If they think they can scare us, they're wrong." Others nodded in agreement, their faces filled hard determination. Lisa felt a swell of pride and relief. For so long, she had carried the weight of this battle on her own shoulders. Now, she realized she didn't have to. Together, they formed a plan, rotating patrols, setting up additional traps, and creating an emergency signal system to alert everyone if trouble arose. Over the next few days, the community transformed. What had once been a collection of isolated farms became a united front. Neighbors worked side by side, reinforcing fences, sharing resources, and keeping watch for any signs of the gang. Even the children pitched in, helping with chores and spreading messages between households. Lisa watched it all unfold with a mix of awe and gratitude. These people weren't soldiers. They were ordinary men and women, farmers and shopkeepers, but they had found strength in unity. And in doing so, they had reminded Lisa of something she had almost forgotten. True courage wasn't about facing danger alone. It was about standing together even when the odds seemed insurmountable. As the days passed, Victor grew increasingly frustrated. Every attempt to intimidate Lisa and her supporters failed miserably. His men reported back that the entire town was on high alert, making it nearly impossible to strike without being caught. For the first time, he began to doubt himself. Was this woman truly unbeatable? Little did he know Lisa was preparing for one final showdown. With her neighbor's help, she had turned the entire area into a fortress. Traps lined every road, vantage points covered every angle, and communication lines ensured no one would be caught off guard. If Victor came back, he wouldn't just face Lisa. He would face an entire community united in defiance. And Lisa knew exactly what to do when he did. Victor's frustration reached its peak as days turned into weeks without success. His attempts to intimidate Lisa and her supporters had failed miserably, leaving him humiliated and enraged. The once unstoppable gang leader now found himself trapped in a losing battle, not just against Lisa but against an entire community that refused to bow down. Every plan he devised crumbled under the weight of their unity, and every threat he issued was met with defiance. Back at his hideout, Victor paced furiously, his mind racing for a solution. He couldn't afford another failure. His reputation depended on it. If he didn't act soon, other gangs would see him as weak, a target ripe for overthrow. More importantly, his ego couldn't handle being outsmarted by a single mother and her neighbors. With each passing day, his anger grew darker, more dangerous. "We need to hit them hard," Victor growled during one of his meetings with his crew. "No more games, no more warnings. We go in fast, we destroy everything they care about, and we make sure they never forget who's in charge." His men exchanged uneasy glances. They had seen firsthand how resourceful Lisa and her supporters were. Attacking them head-on meant risking injury or worse, and none of them relished the idea of walking into what felt like a trap. Still, no one dared challenge Victor's orders. Instead, they nodded reluctantly, knowing there was no turning back. Meanwhile, Lisa and her neighbors continued fortifying their defenses. The sense of camaraderie among them only grew stronger with each passing day. Farmers shared tools and supplies while families took turns patrolling the roads and fields. Children played sentry roles, reporting any suspicious activity to their parents. Even elderly residents contributed by keeping watch from their windows or preparing meals for those working late into the night. Lisa remained at the center of it all, coordinating efforts and ensuring everyone stayed safe. She spent hours teaching her neighbors basic self-defense techniques and showing them how to set up effective traps. Her military training proved invaluable, transforming ordinary farmers into a well-prepared team capable of standing their ground. Despite the tension, moments of warmth and hope punctuated their preparations. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the community gathered around a bonfire near Lisa's farm. Someone brought out a guitar, and soon, laughter and music filled the air. For a brief moment, fear faded, replaced by a shared sense of purpose and belonging. As the fire crackled, Mr. Thompson raised a toast. "To Lisa," he said, his voice steady and proud, "and to all of us, for proving that together we can overcome anything." The crowd cheered, raising mugs of cider and clapping enthusiastically. Lisa stood quietly, overwhelmed by their support. She had always believed in the power of resilience, but seeing it embodied by her neighbors reinforced her faith in humanity. These weren't soldiers. They were everyday people who had chosen to fight for what was right. And in doing so, they had become something greater than themselves. Victor chose his moment carefully. Under the cover of darkness, he led his gang toward Lisa's farm, determined to catch them off guard. This time he brought reinforcements, men borrowed from allied gangs, swelling their numbers to nearly 30. Armed with flashlights, crowbars, and makeshift weapons, they moved silently through the woods, avoiding main roads to stay hidden. But Lisa and her neighbors were ready. Thanks to their communication system, word of the approaching gang spread quickly. By the time Victor's men reached the edge of Lisa's property, the entire community was mobilized. Neighbors stationed themselves at strategic points, armed with whatever tools they could find: pitchforks, shovels, even kitchen knives. Children hid safely indoors, instructed to remain quiet until the danger passed. From her perch in the barn loft, Lisa watched the gang approach through the scope of her rifle. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her hands remained steady. Beside her, Jake and Mia crouched low, peering cautiously through cracks in the wooden walls. Though she had tried to keep them away from the action, they insisted on staying close, wanting to help protect their home. "Remember the plan," Lisa whispered to them. "Stay low, stay quiet, and do exactly as I say." Both children nodded solemnly, gripping sticks they had fashioned into makeshift batons. Despite their young age, they understood the gravity of the situation, and they trusted their mother completely. As the gang entered the farm, chaos erupted almost immediately. Hidden tripwires triggered buckets of paint and hay bales to fall onto unsuspecting intruders, disorienting them. Loud alarms rigged to car horns blared suddenly, startling both the gang and nearby livestock. In the confusion, Lisa's neighbors sprang into action, emerging from hiding spots to confront the invaders. Victor roared in frustration, swinging wildly with a metal pipe as he tried to regain control. But for every step forward, his men encountered resistance. Farmers armed with pitchforks jabbed at attackers, forcing them to retreat. Women wielding brooms chased after fleeing gang members, shouting insults that echoed through the night. Even teenagers joined the fray, pelting intruders with rocks and dirt. Through it all, Lisa remained focused, picking off key targets with warning shots fired deliberately wide. Each crack of her rifle served as a reminder of her presence and her skill. When Victor finally spotted her in the barn loft, his rage boiled over. Ignoring the chaos around him, he charged toward the structure, intent on confronting her directly. "Enough of this," he bellowed, smashing through the barn door with brute force. Inside, he found Lisa standing calmly, her rifle aimed squarely at him. Behind her, Mia and Jake held their ground, their expressions fierce despite their fear. "You really don't learn, do you?" Lisa said, her voice cold and unwavering. "Leave. Now." Victor sneered, raising his weapon. "You think you can stop me? Look around you. You're outnumbered." Lisa smiled faintly, glancing past him. Outside, the tide of the battle had shifted dramatically. His men were retreating, overwhelmed by the sheer determination of the townspeople. Several lay sprawled in the dirt, nursing injuries inflicted by pitchforks and fists. Others scrambled to escape, abandoning their leader in their haste. "It's over, Victor," Lisa said firmly. Go back to wherever you came from and don't come back." For a moment, Victor hesitated, his bravado faltering. Then with a final glare, he dropped his weapon and stormed out of the barn, shouting for his remaining men to follow him. Within minutes, the gang fled into the night, leaving behind a trail of discarded weapons and shattered pride. As dawn broke, the community gathered to survey the aftermath. The farm bore signs of the struggle: broken fences, scattered debris, and muddy footprints, but it remained intact. More importantly, no one had been seriously hurt. Cheers erupted as neighbors embraced one another, celebrating their victory. Lisa stood quietly, watching the scene unfold. Her body ached from exhaustion, but her spirit soared. She had fought not just for her family, but for everyone who believed in standing up to injustice. And in doing so, she had proven that courage wasn't about facing danger alone. It was about standing together, united by hope and strength. Her children ran to her, throwing their arms around her waist. "We did it, Mom," Jake exclaimed. Grinning ear to ear, Lisa hugged them tightly, tears glistening in her eyes. "Yes, we did," she whispered. "Together." The morning after the final confrontation with Victor's gang brought a sense of calm that had been missing for weeks. The sun rose gently over the fields, casting soft golden light across Lisa's farm. Birds chirped cheerfully, and the air smelled fresh and clean, as if nature itself was celebrating the victory. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was no tension hanging over the community. The threat was gone. Victor and his gang had fled, leaving behind nothing but their shame. Neighbors gathered once again at Lisa's farm, but this time the atmosphere was lighter. Laughter replaced fear, and gratitude filled every conversation. People hugged one another, sharing stories of the night before. Some joked about how they had chased off gang members with kitchen utensils or scared them away with loud noises. Others marveled at how quickly the town had come together, turning ordinary farmers into unlikely heroes. Lisa stood near the porch, watching it all unfold with a quiet smile. She hadn't sought recognition, but she couldn't deny the warmth in her heart as she listened to her neighbors talk about what they had accomplished. These weren't soldiers, they were teachers, shopkeepers, and farmers, but they had proven that courage didn't require uniforms or weapons. It came from within, fueled by love for family, friends, and community. Her children, Mia and Jake, played nearby with other kids, laughing as they reenacted scenes from the battle. And then Mom said, "Leave now," Jake shouted dramatically, pointing an imaginary rifle at his sister. Mia giggled, pretending to run away in mock surrender. Lisa shook her head, amused by their antics. To them, the events of the previous night were already becoming part of their childhood adventures, a story they would tell for years to come. As the day wore on, Mr. Thompson approached Lisa, carrying a steaming mug of coffee. He handed it to her with a kind smile. "You've done something remarkable here, Lisa," he said warmly. "Not just for yourself, but for all of us." Lisa accepted the mug gratefully, taking a sip before responding. "It wasn't just me," she replied. "Honestly, everyone played a part. Without your help and everyone else's, we wouldn't have won." Mr. Thompson nodded thoughtfully. "Still, you led the charge. You showed us that standing up to bullies isn't just possible. It's necessary. We owe you a lot." Lisa looked away modestly, uncomfortable with the praise. She had never considered herself a leader. She had simply done what needed to be done. But as she glanced around at the smiling faces of her neighbors, she realized that sometimes leadership wasn't about commanding others. It was about inspiring them to believe in themselves. Over the next few days, life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be after such a dramatic event. Neighbors continued working together, repairing fences, cleaning up debris, and ensuring everyone's farms were back in order. The sense of unity lingered, stronger than ever. People checked in on one another regularly, making sure no one felt overwhelmed by the cleanup efforts. Lisa spent her days focused on rebuilding her property while keeping a watchful eye on the horizon. Though Victor and his gang hadn't returned, she knew better than to let her guard down completely. Men like him rarely gave up without a fight, and she suspected he might try to retaliate someday. Until then, she remained vigilant, reinforcing her defenses and teaching her children how to stay safe. One evening, as she sat on the porch with Mia and Jake, Lisa reflected on everything that had happened. The past few weeks had tested her in ways she hadn't anticipated, forcing her to confront parts of herself she had long buried. Her military training had come in handy, yes, but it was her determination to protect her family and community that had truly made the difference. "Mom," Mia asked suddenly, breaking the silence, "do you think those bad men will come back?" Lisa hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Maybe," she admitted, "but if they do, we'll be ready. We've shown them and ourselves that we're stronger together than they'll ever be." Jake nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, they don't stand a chance against us." Lisa chuckled softly, ruffling his hair. "Exactly. And remember, strength isn't just about fighting. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard." Her children smiled, reassured by her confidence. They trusted her completely, knowing she would always keep them safe. For Lisa, that trust was both a gift and a responsibility, one she took seriously. Word of Lisa's bravery spread beyond the small town, reaching neighboring communities and even local news outlets. Reporters arrived, eager to interview the woman who had single-handedly driven away a dangerous gang. At first, Lisa declined their requests, preferring to stay out of the spotlight. But eventually she agreed to speak, not for herself, but to send a message to others facing similar challenges. In the interview, Lisa spoke candidly about the importance of standing up to injustice and supporting one another. She emphasized that courage wasn't about being fearless, it was about acting despite fear. "None of us are invincible," she said, her voice steady and sincere. "But when we work together, we become unstoppable." Her words resonated deeply, inspiring people far beyond her own community. Letters poured in from strangers thanking her for her example, while others shared stories of how they had decided to take a stand in their own lives. Lisa was humbled by the response, though she still insisted she wasn't a hero. To her, she had simply done what any parent would do: protect her family and home. Months passed, and the memory of Victor's gang faded into the background. The scars on the land healed, and the community thrived. Crops grew tall and healthy, livestock grazed peacefully, and laughter echoed through the fields once more. Lisa's farm became a symbol of resilience and hope, drawing visitors from nearby towns who wanted to meet the woman who had inspired so many. For Lisa, life continued, much as it had before, but with a renewed sense of purpose. She cherished her moments with Mia and Jake, knowing how precious peace truly was. And though she hoped never to face another threat like Victor's gang, she remained prepared, always mindful of the lessons she had learned. One crisp autumn afternoon, as Lisa walked through her fields with her children, she paused to watch the sunset. The sky blazed with fiery hues of orange and pink, painting the world in colors too vivid to ignore. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel proud, not just of what she had achieved, but of the community she had helped create. "You know," she said softly, turning to Mia and Jake, "sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought with weapons. They're fought with the will to survive and the courage to stand up for what matters most." Her children nodded, gazing at her with wide-eyed admiration. To them, she was a hero, not because she had defeated a gang, but because she had shown them the power of strength, unity, and love. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Lisa wrapped her arms around her children, pulling them close. Whatever the future held, she knew one thing for certain: they would face it together. And together, they could overcome anything.